They didn't know my phone was already recording when my father called me not truly his at my own promotion dinner. The restaurant was full, 40 people, my colleagues, my boss. My mother was sitting 3 seats away, gripping her wine glass so hard her knuckles had gone white. I had just been named regional director, at 29, the youngest in the company's history. My father stood up with a toast glass and a smile I had learned very early in life to be afraid of. "To my daughter," he said. Or, he paused. He actually paused for effect. "The young woman I raised as my daughter." The table went quiet the way rooms go quiet when something bad is about to happen and everyone can feel it, but no one wants to be the first to move. My name is Sarah Calloway, and that night, my father tried to erase 29 years of my life in front of everyone who mattered to my future. He almost pulled it off. The toast that was really a threat. Dad set his glass down and looked at me directly, not with love, with calculation. "I've been doing some thinking," he said, "about family, about legacy, about what we pass down, and to whom." He reached into his jacket. He actually brought a document to my promotion dinner, a folded paper which he placed on the table in front of me like a verdict. "I'd like Sarah to take a DNA paternity test," he announced to the table, "before we discuss the Calloway estate at the end of the year." My boss, Linda, looked at me. My colleagues looked at their plates. My mother whispered, "Thomas, please." "It's a simple request," Dad said, still smiling. "If Sarah is confident, she'll have no problem." That sentence, designed perfectly. Refuse and you look guilty. Agree and you surrender the floor. I picked up the folded paper. I looked at it. I set it back down. "Sure," I said. "I'll take one." He blinked. That wasn't what he expected. Good. What I already knew. This didn't come out of nowhere. 3 months earlier, my dad's younger brother, my Uncle Pete, had called me during a layover in Denver. He sounded nervous, like someone who had been holding something for a long time and finally couldn't anymore. "Your grandfather's estate gets reviewed this December," he said. "The old trust is distributed differently based on how many direct biological heirs your father has. If he can show you're not biological, his share doubles." I sat in that airport chair and felt the floor shift. "Pete," I said, "am I biologically his daughter?" Long silence. "I don't know," he said finally, "but I know he hired someone to find out, 6 months ago, quietly." After we hung up, I sat there for 40 minutes while my flight boarded without me. I booked the next flight, and I started thinking. Because if my father was planning this, he wasn't looking for the truth. He was building a case. The conversation with my mother. I drove to my parents' house on a Wednesday afternoon when my dad was at the golf club. My mother, Carol, was in the garden. She saw my face and stood up slowly, the way people stand when they know the conversation has finally arrived. "Mom," I said, "tell me the truth. All of it." She pulled off her gardening gloves. She folded them twice. She didn't look at me. "Your father and I tried for 4 years," she said quietly. "The doctors told us he had a very low chance, almost zero. They recommended a sperm donor." She paused. "He agreed. He signed every form. He held my hand in the clinic." "He was there," I said. "He chose it. He wanted you." She finally looked at me. Her eyes were dry, but her voice was not. "He wanted you until the money became bigger than the love." I drove home. I didn't cry until I was inside my apartment with the door locked. Then I gave myself exactly 1 hour. Then I started planning. Step 1. Get real results. 2 weeks after the dinner, the DNA kit my father had provided came back. He called me from his car, voice warm with fake sympathy. "Sarah, the results came. I want you to know I still care about you deeply, but," he paused for drama, "the probability is 0%. You're not my biological daughter." I let the silence sit for 3 full seconds. "Okay," I said. "Thank you for letting me know." He hesitated. He expected tears. He expected begging. "That's it?" he asked. "That's it. Goodbye, Dad." I hung up. I opened my laptop. I called the company listed on his results report. "Can you verify this result ID?" I asked the rep. Typing sounds. Then a long pause. Ma'am, this ID number is not in our system. We have no record of a sample submitted under this name in the past year. My hand stayed steady on the mouse. He didn't even send the kit. He designed the result first, then printed the paper to match. I thanked her. I saved the call recording. I opened a new folder on my desktop and labeled it Evidence. Then I booked my own certified lab appointment, chain of custody, photographed samples, notarized witness, the kind of test that holds up anywhere. Results came back 9 days later. I wasn't surprised, but seeing it written officially still hit me differently. Donor conceived, biologically not my father's, but legally, morally, documented, his daughter. He had signed every consent form. He was listed on my birth certificate. He had chosen this, knowingly, decades ago, which meant his DNA test proved nothing about inheritance. It only proved he was willing to lie. Step 2. Find what he was actually hiding. People who forge documents don't do it casually. They do it because something is already wrong. I called Uncle Pete back. If my dad wanted me out of the estate, I said, what exactly would he gain? Uncle Pete was quiet for a moment. He's been managing the Calloway Family Trust for 9 years, he said, since your grandfather got sick. There was never a real audit. Has anyone looked at the statements? I tried once. He said the statements were being updated. That was 3 years ago. I hired a private forensic accountant. Her name was Diane. She had worked white-collar fraud cases for 11 years and had a face that didn't react to anything. I gave her everything I had access to. 3 weeks later, she called me into her office and laid out a single printed spreadsheet. There's a company called Calloway Property Advisors, LLC, she said. It has received $890,000 from the family trust, advisory fees. She slid a second page across. State Business Registry. Registered owner? Thomas Calloway. My father. He had created a fake company. He had been paying himself from his own children's inheritance, and he had been doing this for 7 years without anyone checking. Until now. I printed everything. I organized it by date. I created a cover summary with page numbers. Then I called the estate attorney my grandfather had originally hired, a woman named Ms. Farrell, who my father had quietly stopped including in meetings 3 years ago. She answered on the first ring. Ms. Farrell, I said, I need to schedule a trust review. I have documentation. She said, how soon can you come in? The day of the meeting. My father had scheduled the estate review himself on a Saturday morning at Ms. Farrell's firm. He planned it as a formality, a session where the DNA results would be presented, I would be quietly removed from the trust, and he would walk out with everything reorganized in his favor. He did not know Ms. Farrell had already spoken to me. He did not know I had emailed the forensic report, the registry documents, and the forged DNA evidence to every trustee the night before. Subject line, urgent, trust irregularities requiring review before Saturday's meeting. He did not know Uncle Pete would be there. When I walked into that conference room, my father was already seated at the head of the table. He looked at me, his jaw tightened. Sarah, I wasn't aware you'd be attending. I'm a named beneficiary, I said. Miss Farrell sent me the notice. He glanced at Miss Farrell. She gave him nothing. The meeting opened. My father began his prepared remarks about the DNA results and the biological heir clause. Miss Farrell stopped him. Thomas, before we get to that, the trustees have some questions about the advisory payments. She slid Diane's report to the center of the table. Calloway Property Advisors, LLC, has received $890,000 from the trust, advisory fees. She slid a second page across. State Business Registry. Registered owner? Thomas Calloway. My father. He had created a fake company. He had been paying himself from his own children's inheritance, and he had been doing this for 7 years without anyone checking. Until now. I printed everything. I organized it by date. I created a cover summary with page numbers. Then I called the estate attorney my grandfather had originally hired, a woman named Ms. Farrell, who my father had quietly stopped including in meetings 3 years ago. She answered on the first ring. Ms. Farrell, I said, "I need to schedule a trust review. I have documentation." She said, "How soon can you come in?" The day of the meeting. My father had scheduled the estate review himself on a Saturday morning at Ms. Farrell's firm. He planned it as a formality, a session where the DNA results would be presented, I would be quietly removed from the trust, and he would walk out with everything reorganized in his favor. He did not know Ms. Farrell had already spoken to me. He did not know I had emailed the forensic report, the registry documents, and the forged DNA evidence to every trustee the night before. Subject line, "Urgent, trust irregularities requiring review before Saturday's meeting." He did not know Uncle Pete would be there. When I walked into that conference room, my father was already seated at the head of the table. He looked at me, his jaw tightened. "Sarah, I wasn't aware."